Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Next Economy MBA. This is yeah. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Get excited, get excited. Whoa, whoa. This is the last Q&A before we start Cohort 11 in just a couple short weeks in September. So welcome, everybody. My name is Sean Berry. I am a worker owner at Lyft Economy. And thank you all for joining. You're welcome. If you want to share your location in the chat where you're zooming in from, folks can do that. Get a sense of where folks are joining us from. And we'll do just a brief intro here about how and why we started this training, who it's for. We'll do some facilitator introductions. And then we're very happy to have Nadia Akbarali here, one of our MBA alumni. And so as soon as we do intros, we're going to introduce Nadia. She's going to share some of her experience in the training. And then she's available to y'all for any questions you might have from a participant perspective. After that, we've received questions in advance from you, and we'll take any questions real time. And we'll just spend, again, most of our time answering your questions and responding to what y'all are interested in. All right, so that's the kind of run of show today. So what is the Next Economy MBA, and why are we doing this? Well, Lyft Economy, we are an impact consulting firm, and we have a vision for an economy that works for all life. It might take us a little bit to get there, but assure you it's not science fiction. We're not talking about things that don't actually exist, but we see things that exist that actually could scale and meet needs for humanity while nourishing the ecology within which we live. And so that's what we're up to. And in order to get there, we have kind of a multifaceted approach. We do a number of things, including consulting. We have an investment fund. We have a podcast. And one of the things we've done is we took our consulting methodology of working with, we founded in 2011. So we're 12 years in. We've probably worked with 200-300 organizations in the Next Economy space. And so from that privilege of working with all these teams, we've seen a remarkable and actually simple set of patterns that are common to these organizations, the solutions that they all need to solve in order to advance their vision and provide right livelihood, good employment, create a benefit in their communities, etc. So we've taken our consulting methodology and we put it into the MBA, the Next Economy MBA curriculum. And we started this in 2018. We are currently in our 10th cohort. We have over 500 people in the training. Also, we just published the curriculum into a book this spring, came out. So now we have a book. We also did a podcast series for each of the 18 sessions of the course that has been released. And here we are promoting and filling cohort 11. So so one of the requests for support was to make our consulting more accessible. So instead of one-to-one, this is our format to go to one-to-many and to hopefully offer these solutions out to a wider audience. And in terms of who it's for, we do have a variety and a lovely diversity of folks that take the training, both geographically, both industry, across industries, across types of organizations, nonprofits, for-profits. And then also there's a couple main archetypes. One is folks that are in a Next Economy organization already. It's either your own company or a team you're on. You have a vision for the Next Economy, and you're kind of hard at work with your team to try to manifest that. And so we have this set of skills and practices that hopefully is going to kind of catalyze your movement and advance your movement quicker. And then the other group is individuals that they're either looking to get into the Next Economy or maybe bring Next Economy values into their own work. And so there's kind of a transition, either phase or engagement, and that's kind of the other big group. But again, there's lots of variations across that. But that's a little bit of why we started it, who we are, what it is. Now I'm gonna call on my team members that I see here for their personal introduction and background. And I see smiling Phoenix Soleil. Phoenix, you want to give a quick intro and then pass it around?
All right. Phoenix Soleil, worker owner at Lyft Economy. I'm so lucky to be a part of this team. And a part of creating a next economy that I'm a part of is the culture and communication. Because when you're trying to do things differently, you realize, wow, we don't have skills for how to, like, sometimes companies need help with skills for how to make decisions when you don't have a hierarchy, as in some worker owner co-ops. Or how do you, when you're trying to have more inclusion and you're trying to do things without continuing the historical inequities, how do you do that? And then I also support people with conflicts come up, and it's not and so, like, with mediations and how to have really authentic conversations that are caring. Because sometimes people are like, whoa, well, we're gonna all be caring and loving, and so there's never going to be conflict. And actually, that the healthier your company is, the healthy you have healthy conflict. And it's beautiful because by resolving it, you learn and you grow and you become even more effective and create a closer, intimate culture. So that's my part of the some of the expertise I bring. And the MBA has been an incredible tool for helping people get to see the whole picture of companies, of what is needed. And I'm glad you're here. And I'll go to Jeanette.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeanette. I use she, they pronouns. I'm zooming in from unceded Multnomah and Cowlitz land in what's known as Portland, Oregon. I joined Lyft Economy in October of last year as our marketing lead. So if y'all have received an email or a social media post or something like that, I was probably behind it, and thank you for tolerating me. Jokes aside, though, I'm super passionate about helping organizations in the next economy learn how to authentically tell their story, and connect with all of us who are looking for the possibilities and imaginations and dreams of what a different world could look like. So I do find marketing, communications, and strategy incredibly important in building the power and the critical mass that we need to see in order for our movements to be effective. So I help out a little bit with this MBA team, but I'm super happy to chat with any of you for any marketing related questions or needs throughout the course. And yeah, I love our MBA program. It's genuinely been one of my favorite things since I started. They're just such incredible folks that take this program and really facilitate and support each other's learning journeys. Actually had one of the alumni from, I think, cohort 7 over to my house for dinner yesterday. And so something that I'm hoping for is just like more local, like community building and power, which I know a lot of alumni are super active in as well. So finding like online community spaces and gathering is really important. But we've also got a couple of different networks of folks throughout the country and around the world, where folks are kind of engaging with each other offline as well, which I think is really special. Kevin, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Annette. So Kevin Bayou, he, him pronouns, and at Lyft Economy, I'm a worker owner and one of the facilitators of the Next Economy MBA program. And my work outside the program, in terms of client work, kind of economic development, transformative economic development projects, a lot of them having to do with intersections with circular economy and climate change, in some way or another. And my specialty, if you will, might be understanding finance and transformative finance, so fundraising, all those kind of things that tend to come up in the Next Economy MBA. I do a lot of work in those areas around resources and capital and dismantling domination paradigms around that and kind of transforming our understanding of what's possible. Back to you, Sean.
Hey, thanks everybody. What a wonderful team. So grateful to be on it. Briefly about me, Sean Berry, worker owner at Lift Economy. I do a lot of work with worker-owned cooperatives, which of course we are one, but I also help cooperatives either start or transition, having existing founders sell and transition to worker co-ops, or ownership transitions in general. That's something I've been working on. So those are a couple of themes of my work. And yeah, very happy to be here with you all, and want to introduce Nadia Akbarali. Or Nadia, if you don't mind, can I ask you to introduce yourself and share your experience being in the MBA? And then folks, while Nadia's talking, if you want to, either think of questions or you can drop them in the chat, and we'll have a chance to hear or have her respond. Hi, Nadia, welcome.
Hi, I'm Nadia Akbarali, and I think I was in cohort 9. Was that my cohort? I think that's my cohort. I'm I like to call myself a recovering capitalist. And I was on, and now a post-capitalist. I've been working over the last 8 years to try to find spaces, community, which I didn't come from or emerge out of, that had frameworks and languaging and living from a space of planet first. And I evolved into it and discovered Lyft. And so I've had a couple of months to sort of reflect on my time in my cohort and in this program. And I can say that also, I wanted to live into my my faith principles more fully, and I didn't feel that the way I was living expressed that in a very fulsome way. And so, being in this program, first of all, I want to just speak to the presence of Phoenix, Aaron, Kevin, and Sean, and Akil, who had the privilege of being in BIPOC affinity space, who led the BIPOC affinity space, that these folks live into whatever principles they talk about. These are folks that lead by example. These are folks that show up and are supporting your learning because they walk the walk. And that's pretty much the highest compliment I can pay. And so I'm very, very grateful to them, because it was a safe learning environment where I felt like I could show up as myself. And that was a big deal for me, to be able to have that space when it's not my general experience in life. I found a number of communities that's possible, and this is one in particular. So just want to say that about these folks first. The second thing I wanted to say is how important your cohort is, and how great it is to have a community of practice and a cohort that asks questions you don't even know you have, and that you really want to be in the room for. And so for me, what was very valuable was showing up to class and office hours as much as I could, because I got so much out of it. And I know that that's not possible for all folks, and I get that, because of work commitments and family commitments and life challenges. And so, but I was able to do that. And so I just wanted to speak to that piece. And the other thing that I really valued was the learning, the case studies and the learning, and the what was actually taught, and the resources that were provided. It was just really excellent. And again, as a capitalist, excellent, as a former capitalist, excellent, just really outstanding. The framing, the way it guides you through, you imagining, like giving you what works already and allowing you space to imagine what could work for you. So always open-ended about it, and also providing what exists, and it's impressive what exists. And so providing you all of that scope was, for me, super valuable. And what I'm able to do with it, I'm already hitting the ground running with everything I've been taught in this program, which was what I was hoping for, and I actually did get. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that this is what this program has meant for me in particular. And so I wish you, if you take this program, I wish you the best on your journey. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So if you have any questions of me, yeah.
Thanks so much, Nadia. Really appreciate your kind and generous words. And of course, it was just a pleasure to have your, like, as you're sharing your attention and engagement in the training, which is yes, a wonderful way to get value out of it. So questions for Nadia? You can unmute yourself or drop a question in the chat.
Nadia, I have a question, if that's all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious. Yeah, would you be willing to give us kind of like talk about where in your journey you were when you entered the program, and then kind of concretely how it supported you in hitting the ground running, like you said? Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of fear and a little bit. So I did a lot of research, like a tremendous amount of research before I got into the program, and I was taking courses in all over the place. And I come from, like, I have a background in economic development and some finance, and I'm also an so-called impact investor. And so I had a lot of languaging, and and I knew it wasn't enough. And I knew I wasn't approaching it in a way that I wanted to, which was much more grassroots focused, and much more equitable, and much more community based. And so, and I knew I didn't, and there was a little bit of fear and intimidation around that, given my background, and relative, I'm really speaking to relative privilege, because there's a lot of privileges I don't have, but there's a lot of relative privilege I do have. And so there was like, there was a piece around that, that I was scared about, and fearful of being judged around. And so I came into that program in that spot, with quite a bit of information, but not enough of languaging, not enough of being in dialogues or spaces where, experiences of folks. Now, I came from an immigrant in a very, very challenged background, but because my folks were able to use the system in the way that they could to be able to achieve wealth, I was able to move later on in life into those spaces and places. And so I wasn't having the experience of folks that were feeling pressure and challenged by the system as it currently stands. And so I wanted to get a current understanding of that. And I wanted to put myself in the way of really sitting with the discomfort of that. And so I entered the program at that place. And I think that because the facilitators really live into their principles, and don't just act out of a state of their relative privilege, I think that really helped me to be able to see what role models were like. And so part of it was what I was being taught, but part of it was the role modeling pieces. and then the cohort of what they're facing, what's going on specifically on the ground, because a lot of your cohort are folks that are looking for languaging and doing that sort of work, but some of them are already on the ground doing work in community. And so you're getting a very broad perspective. You're getting the gamut of experiences, if that's a way of saying it. Is anybody, Liv, do you want to like step in where I'm maybe not speaking to?
I want to +1 that, because when I have clients, sometimes I will encourage them to join the program, because you get really intelligent questions, like you said when you started, about, because people are doing it, they're doing the work, so they're not just like passively, they're like, well, I've tried that and it didn't work this way, and then so you get a really advanced kind of conversation that comes out of that because of their experience. And then sometimes people bring up resources that we didn't know about that we get to add. So this program has constantly gotten stronger because we're working, like, part of it is that we bring in these are the, like, because we've been working with people who are on the cutting edge, so we bring in those, like, the case histories of that and the work they've done, and then we're working with people who are also on the cutting edge, and so it keeps feeding itself and getting stronger and stronger. And anyone want to add? Be a good place to.
I don't know if this is appropriate to like insert, but I guess, Amelia, to your question, I'd be curious if you feel like sharing like what you're hoping to get out of the program. I know that we have folks who are sometimes coming in looking to like develop a business plan for something they're wanting to start. Sometimes folks are like larger organizations and hoping to innovate within. Sometimes folks are like looking for a career shift to something that's more like resonant and life affirming. So I'm wondering if either Lift facilitators, if you want to speak to like where we typically see folks coming in and like outcomes out of that, or Amelia, if there's like a specific, if you're feeling willing to share and like wondering if that's supportive, either way.
Thanks for that invitation. I guess I'm sort of in the developing a business plan stage, developing and dreaming. I don't know if that, but it sounds really exciting to be in community with people who are at all different aspects of, or with like multifaceted experience in all different aspects of that journey.
Sean, sorry, you came off mute. I was like curious if you were wanting to like speak to that and like other folks coming in with like business plans or wanting to start something, and if this is a good fit.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's definitely one of like the main kind of archetypes we see. As I tried to say at the beginning, it's kind of like either you're already kind of up to something and then you realize it's going to be helpful to connect with the community and folks who've gone through it before, or you realize you're going to go into something and you want to get some support and knowledge kind of before. So those are the main, again, the groupings that we see. And then again, there's a lot of variation in there, but it's maybe I'll say this about the course too, that's we see it as a literacy course as opposed to a competency. Like there's some questions of, is it an accredited MBA? It is not an accredited MBA. It's not a master's degree. We're using that term MBA as kind of shorthand for like, how do you run your business? What we're attempting to do is a little bit disruptive to the business model of higher education, right? So we're instead of saying, hey, take a 2-year long program and $100,000 of debt, et cetera, we're saying, hey, like this is a quick course that is going to give you enough direction to, as Nadia said, hit the ground running and start doing stuff. It doesn't mean, there's no good reason to go to grad school. Definitely, there certainly are. But if you have a team, you already have a project you're working on, this is going to be much more applicable than a master's degree, which is mostly for middle managers of large corporations. Whereas this is suited towards small teams, really values driven. What are the set of business skills that are in concert with your values instead of in tension with them? So I see Reverend Dr. Sandy.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this. This is very interesting. I'm taking a lot in here. I had a question about, I'm kind of confused around the context of how this will happen. Because I've heard like newbies, people just now developing, a concept for a business and developing business plans. I'm sure there's like some midway people in there that are kind of on their way, but not quite there. And then I'm sure there are people that are veterans that are doing this, but maybe need this help and the networking and the cohort. So how, when you're doing, are they classes? Are they just networking sessions? How does this work? And is everybody together, all these different levels of business, aspects, or is it separate? How does it work?
Great. Maybe Kevin, do you mind? Maybe it's just some of the basics.
Sure. Yeah, the basic structure. So, Dr. Sandy, the core structure has 18 live facilitated sessions. They're either 2 hours or 90 minutes. Everybody, all cohort participants are invited to participate in those live facilitated sessions. Each live facilitated session is followed by a 1 hour office hour where more open-ended questions about the content for synthesis and integration are provided either in advance or live, and facilitators will address, and other participants will also chime in and share their wisdom and learning to contribute to the learning experience. Everybody it kind of gets to enter into the same, everybody's entering at different points of experience, lived experience, and maybe stage or process in terms of developing their next economy institution or their next economy vocation. But the theory of the learning experience is that even though people are entering at different points, each of the live facilitated sessions has a content kind of container, a theme, and maybe I'll cover those in a moment to address somebody else's preceded question. And there's a breakout group opportunity to kind of explore either a hypothetical or one person in a breakout group might have their next economy enterprise or organization or nonprofit or whatever vision they're working with. And the hypothetical the breakout group provides some instruction about how to take the learning into some applied learning of like, oh, what would the next step be here? How would you recommend going about this? How would we apply it to some of the strategy of what we just learned in this scenario? And so even though people are entering with at different stages of the development of their vision, there's opportunities for learning within that. So somebody who's already doing something, maybe they've been doing it for a few years, having a fresh set of eyes for somebody to ask some critical questions like, why are you doing that? Or what could you do further? What more impact could you have? Can be really helpful for advancing their impact vision. Somebody who's like, I think I have a vision for something, can learn a lot from people who already are a few years into having done some trial and error about what worked for them or what didn't. And similarly, being part of a cohort or community that has ideation and exploring possibilities based on their unique lived experience from where they're living or what they've observed or participated in can also be helpful for generating and advancing that vision. And then people in a career transition are getting oftentimes ideas about things that they could apply in their current vocational setting and what to look for when they're thinking about transitioning. So even though people are entering with different intentions and experiences, there's actually a synergy. I hate to use that word because it sounds so like woo-woo or whatever, but there's like a complementary possibility of learning from each other. And we try and facilitate that in each of the live sessions, and I think maybe even more so in the office hours, where we get some oftentimes individual questions about here's the problem I'm trying to solve based on the content that we were talking about in that session. How would I go about that? And we get to hear from a number of people. So I'll pause there, and then there is a preceded question about what is in those 18 sessions, and we can address that as we go. But I wanted to check with you, Reverend Dr. Sandy, how did that land?
Can we also check, Nadia, you're on Stack? I don't know if you had a direct response.
I just, yeah, based on the trajectory of this dialogue, I just wanted to add in that I was looking at a formal MBA, and I had interviewed with a number of them, prestigious, so-called prestigious ones. And what I realized is they were going to just teach me things that I didn't want to know, that I already knew. And when they couldn't come back and answer questions, 5 questions that I had, I knew that I would be a net contributor to a $250,000 Canadian MBA program versus a net recipient of information. And the network that I would be provided with of folks that were in these programs would be the same old. And so it was a wake-up call. And then I can say I've written business plans. I come from an entrepreneurial family, etc. And so what was different about coming through this program was, when I say languaging, I mean also the languaging of how to be different was there to actually get your brain to use different languaging and to think differently was really, really important to me. I don't even know how to say it in another way, but neurologically. Because looking at accounting statements that were provided during this program and having words like I think one of the words that they used was for revenue was reciprocity. Just like shifting the languaging around how you frame out a business model and what that business model can potentially be like. That was really, really key for me. So just framing they addressed extractive economy, but you don't even, you could just see it in the way that the setup was in the education that was being provided. What was being provided was a very different framing of how to be in the world. And so that was really important to me. And then also from the hit the ground running perspective, for me particularly, because everybody is along their journey and all valid spots to be in along the journey of what this is for them individually. And for me, it was, I kind of had a sense of what my offering was. I'm doing embodiment coaching, somatic coaching for people on the front line of systems change and climate justice. And that's great to have an offering, but what does the business model behind that offering look like? I didn't want it to be a hierarchical business model. I wanted the business model to be something that was rooted in social justice principles as well. And so for me, hitting the ground running meant, okay, now I have a framework for what that looks. What does the behind the scenes structure for a partner worker owner organizational model look like? And so I hope that sort of clears up a little bit of like what it was for me, what was showing up. But thank you. And if there are no other questions for me, I'm gonna jet into a hike.
Thanks, Nadia. Get out there. Enjoy the nature for us. All right, friends. See, there was a couple other questions in the chat I want to make sure we don't miss. And then yeah, any other questions coming live, and then we have our list of all the questions that came in beforehand that we'll make sure we get to all of them. So I'm just paging back here. Amelia asks, how much material in the course focuses on cooperative governance specifically? if just specifically on cooperative governance, it's one part of one session where we cover governance and we talk about different options. But we do refer to cooperatives in general quite often. Yeah, we start each session with a case story. A lot of those are co-ops. So, but and the way we present the material is that we focus on governance in a way that you can apply it to a cooperative, or you can apply it to a top-down business. You can apply it to kind of any structure based on what you're trying to achieve. So it doesn't have to be a cooperative to be using democratic governance, right? So we kind of disambiguate a few things. For example, legal structure versus operational structure. Some companies will be legally registered as a cooperative. Some just have an operating agreement that they function as a cooperative. So we try to kind of tease those things out to be for the principles to be as applicable to everybody, not just co-ops. Because if we're looking at the sector of co-ops, folks might be aware it's a very small sector of the economy, even though we think it's really important. So what we're trying to do is propagate some of the elements that we think are really important there, like democracy, shared ownership, etc. So
yeah,
checking, yeah.
I like to add, yeah, that it's woven through, especially since we are a worker-owned co-op. We're living it too. But if you have a question, even if it's something like about whether to be an LLC or to be a nonprofit, we're going to be, there might be a comment, oh, if you're going to be this kind, you might want to look at how you can be a cooperative and be a nonprofit, something that you might not know. That's like so on the edge of what's the business as usual. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks. I'm also seeing back in the chat, Rebecca had asked, she's shared that the class time was same as the standing meeting time, and I don't think I can miss any every week. And Nadia emphasized how important it was to connect with the cohort. I want to hear reactions for how much it would detract from the experience to be there live regularly versus watching the recordings. Maybe Kevin, can I call on you just to?
Sure, yeah. Well, we do take in feedback, and there are a number of participants in the 500 alumni and current cohort participants that have had constraints, sometimes by time zone. Maybe they're in like Australia or Hong Kong where they cannot attend any of the live sessions reasonably. And so they've only been able to participate through the video recordings. And so in terms of accessibility and accommodating that and what that means for the learning experience, we do have, for example, for the office hours, you can pre-submit your questions. Every live session and, of course, office hour are recorded, as well as the affinity groups and some of the other ancillary and adjacent learning opportunities throughout the training. The recordings are made available, within usually 24 hours of the session. Does it detract from the learning experience to not be able to be there live? I would say yes. Even by the feedback that we have, there's the general feedback is for those who have to only use video, say it's still valuable, but it's different. So I think one of the major differences would be especially the breakout groups in the live facilitated sessions, where that's like a dynamic opportunity for synthesis and integration of learning concepts. That's of course difficult to do through the video, so that's something that happens live. That said, we do have what's called extra fun. So there are about 16 of the 18 sessions have an extra fun invitation. We don't use the word homework because we know too many people who are in therapy because of that word, and it's just not. It's also optional. It's not an obligatory thing. So you can voluntarily do the extra fun assignments, which are like the hypotheticals or the breakout groups in terms of applying what the session content is to the scenario that you're in. So there's a lot of templates to fill out and questions to kind of practice what's explored in the session. And that's a proxy for some of the breakout and the live sessions. Yeah, so that's, I don't know, Sean, did I miss anything there? No, I would say, yeah.
You got it.
I
Thank
want
you.
to add something
Phoenix, go ahead.
that you said that you couldn't, I mean, if I understood correctly, you couldn't make the live, but you can make the work, the office hours. Because one of the things you could plan on doing is listening to, and also the recordings are a video and as audio, so you could be listening to it as you drive, for example. I mean, you miss some of the visuals, but if you were able to attend some of them, then you would get some of that. Oh, I do not have meetings during the office hours. Cool. So, yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, let's see, there's a number of questions. Let's see. Dr. Sandy's asking, how do we address business models like nonprofit organizations versus for-profits? They are structured and run very differently. Lift team, somebody want to take this one?
I'm happy to dive in. So I think Sean mentioned earlier that like kind of in the training, we do explore business models, you know, from almost a legal entity agnostic framework in terms of enterprise design. We do kind of explore the trade-offs and the nuances of what structures are available. That content, for what it's worth, is one of the few places, I'm just trying to address other questions. That content is one of the few places in the training where I'd say it's mostly US centric for anybody who's watching this recording or thinking about the global context, because we do cover like the idea of incorporating under United States. Different states have different statutes about what it means to be, you know, a cooperative or an LLC or a corporation or a multi-stakeholder cooperative or a trust-owned organization, or in the world of nonprofits, a 501c3 or a 501c4 or some other designation. So we have to kind of explore those things based on, you know, what's possible for the next economy. And there is a bias, I think, in the training towards organizations that are not entirely dependent, 100% dependent on gifts or charitable contributions from private family foundations. What I mean by that doesn't mean we don't choose case studies of nonprofits. There's a lot of case studies of nonprofits. We do talk about nonprofit governance, and especially this emerging, Sean mentioned it, like the worker self-directed nonprofit, so how a nonprofit could actually practice democracy within the constraints of state statutes and federal requirements or IRS requirements of being a 501c3 as an example. Turns out that there's a whole emerging world of being able to use different, you know, kind of clauses in your bylaws and different resolutions, board resolutions, to actually operate more democratically. So actually being more horizontal, so power with instead of power over, which is new. A lot of people don't even know that that existed. And so we explore the kind of different ways to operate within each of the different types of legal structures without being prescriptive on this legal structure is necessarily better than any other legal structure. It's all context dependent. I mentioned, so not 100% dependent on gifts or charitable donations. Most of private family foundations have acquired their wealth through extraction. And so being 100% dependent upon that, rather than having either dependency on the community at large or sometimes government funding, or some mix and hybrids. We explore a lot of hybrid options where charitable organizations, you know, nonprofits are affiliated with, you know, things that are organized for profit. And when we say for profit in this context, you'll find, some of you might be really familiar, we talk about next economy organizations like co-ops or benefit corporations, and we say that they are a for-profit organization. For-profit is kind of a misnomer in that by and large, most next economy organizations design their business in order to meet human needs in ways that are beneficial to both the community and the environment. So most of them tend to from a financial perspective, not post much of a profit at all, or have or basically orient towards a break even, because any of the surplus that's being generated is being distributed to the stakeholders, the community itself, or the workers, or the environment, or some combination thereof. So they're not like for profit in the sense that a corporation, multinational corporation in the business as usual economy is maximizing profit. So none of the next economy organizations are oriented towards that, just whatever their legal charter is. So there are lots of differences in terms of what's legally required for operating or running a nonprofit, and even how one files taxes and so forth compared to a for-profit legal entity. And we're able to go through those distinctions as they kind of impact somebody's question. So we do have a session 5 on enterprise structures that does touch on it. And then if somebody has a question about like, well, how would this look in a nonprofit context, we can answer those questions, and we frequently do.
Checking with Dr. Sandy. Does that answer your question? Great, thank you. Ben, are you able to come off mute and ask your question? Thanks for your patience. I know you've been hanging on there a while. Yeah, if you are able, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I see from Beta is asking, I'm wondering if the curriculum reviews starting cooperatives in informal industries. I guess I'd be interested what you mean by informal. But one of the things that we're trying to do is as I said earlier, kind of like separate the legal structure from some of the strategy to run an organization. So if you want those organization to be cooperative, have cooperative governance, it's still, there's many other considerations to it being a successful endeavor. So I guess I'm curious what you mean by informal industries to maybe address your question more specifically, Beta. I don't know if you can come off mute and want to say more. Or did she drop already? No, she's there. Oh, Ben can't unmute yourself. Okay. Oh, neither can Beta. Okay. All right. Well, let's keep going. Let's see. If any other questions come up, please please ask them. Otherwise, we should go through the ones that we have.
Sean, maybe I can go back a little bit.
Yeah, please.
For Beta's question around starting cooperative in informal industries, if by informal industry you kind of mean what's oftentimes called the informal economy, we do emphasize that the next economy framing for us, from our perspective, actually has to include what we would call like informal or non-cash. That's another kind of frame, non-cash transactions. So we talk specifically about like, if though there's a lot of the training that's on kind of nuts and bolts, maybe I should weave this question into like, what is the arc of the content? So the first 6 sessions are more like developing shared language of like what's possible in the next economy, what's really broken about the business as usual economy, and what shifts, cultural as well as structural, would be needed to design our lives and institutions to kind of transform from the business as usual economy to the next economy. And sessions 7 through 16 are really applying like the principles that we go through in the first 6 sessions to the design of organizations. It could be informal, unincorporated associations with informal transactions, but a lot of it is also looking at co-ops and B Corps and nonprofits and more formal or institutions, how to apply those principles, like transparency, and how that would apply to cultural practices like open book management and self-set compensation, things that are not really common in the business as usual economy. Sessions 17 and 18 are kind of like way back out to the big picture. How do we talk about engaging in systems transformation? And session 18 is called What's Next for the Next Economy. But I wanted to emphasize in the first 6 sessions, there's an acknowledgement that even if all the businesses in the world today, tomorrow, were transformed into groovy multi-stakeholder cooperatives and B Corps and whatever, that's wholly inadequate for the transformation to an economy that authentically works for the benefit of all life. And there's actually a lot that has to happen in terms of transitioning our habits, behaviors, and norms, especially in the affluent world, away from mediating all our needs through the cash economy and actually moving towards more informal economy. So there's session 6 is kind of dedicated to like life design and actually how we look at our habits, behaviors, and norms and do some transformation work there in terms of that. And so there is an intersection there where we talk about, it doesn't mean that there's not institutions in the informal economy, but what would governance look like in a unincorporated association that has a free school, non-cash educational institution. That's definitely a vision that would be sympathetic to the principles that we're talking about from a next economy perspective. One thing that maybe this dovetails with the question earlier about like cooperative governance, and John's right, there's one session that's specifically on governance as part of strategy, and part of that would be cooperative governance. But sessions 8 and 9 are about culture and communication practices and understanding the values of an organization and institution. And that transcends whether it's a formal institution or an informal institution, and actually could be applied to every situation you might be in, even if you have a job or some type of vocational existence in the business as usual economy. And those things, learning how to communicate better and understanding our values and the values of those we're around, become really important, we'll find, to the governance practices of dialogue, deliberation, and decision making, and stuff that we talk about in the later sessions that John mentioned.
Thanks, Kevin. Let's see, Ben, I saw you rejoined us. Are you able to ask your question now?
Yeah, I can unmute.
Hey,
I don't know
there
why
she is.
I couldn't. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out how to unmute myself or even like turn on the video earlier.
Well, we got you.
Yeah, so I changed to my laptop and yeah, one question I have is the cooperative structure. It's so for I try to understand whether this program is to help everyone, like to develop a co-op or necessary co-op, not necessary, sorry, co-op, because I mean it's a great business structure. It just, if I am still working on my business by myself, I don't think I could, like I mean, I don't know, maybe I could form like a co-op legally and try to develop towards that in the future, or I could form like say LLP or S Corp for now and then transition to a co-op in the future. That's one question I have. And the other one is the framework and the principles behind it. I've taken some regenerative economics, finance classes, and leadership too recently, and I developed a very strong interest as well as like belief around regenerative principles. And I think your your program is designed aligned with similar values and principles. Thank you, Dr. Sandy. And I wonder if that is something supporting your curriculum development, as well as the values that you encourage in the students to develop the business models based on. That's 2 questions from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. So one question around cooperatives, and then I'm just losing it. Well, maybe
Regenerative economics principles.
yeah, regenerative
I'll take the second one if you want to take the first one.
Okay, deal. Okay, so around cooperative. So again, we're kind of we're trying to address and give a literacy and overview for everything any business would need to address. What problems do you need to solve in order to create a viable organization that's offering a beneficial good or service? And so one of those one option is to be a cooperative, but it is not required. And so in order to benefit from this training, you do not have to be starting a cooperative. If you are starting a cooperative, we are going to be running through again everything you would need to cover to start that organization. But again, it wouldn't need to be a cooperative versus a corporation versus a nonprofit. So kind of whatever legal structure and or operational structure you want to have for your organization, those would simply be kind of design choices for you to make as you're planning or running your organization. So it doesn't have to be. It's certainly great if it does, because that incorporates a couple of the principles of shared governance and shared ownership, but again, not explicitly required to be a co-op. So is that helpful? Just to pause on that. But there will be resources and case stories of cooperatives, but also other organizations as well.
Yeah, and then so it sounds like we're getting some help and coaching in the classes to help us figure out what's the right type of business structure for us, right? S corp, LLP, C corp.
Sure. Yeah. So like Kevin mentioned in session 5, we go specifically on the legal registration options for organization. So then if you want to do the extra fund for that, you can choose one and tell us why you think that's the right one for your organization. And then in any session or session 5, you can ask your question. Hey, I want to do this XYZ. Would it make sense if I did that? You could ask it during the live session. You could ask it during that office hour. You could ask it during any office hour.
Okay.
And then I'll pass to Kevin for the regenerative alignment question.
Yeah. So there are a lot of emerging kind of frameworks around what I would call like macro economic principles around regenerative economy, and the course, the Next Economy MBA, is extraordinarily sympathetic to those frameworks, whether we're looking at like donut economics principles or regenerative economics principles or circular economy principles or the generative economy principles, blue economy principles, green economy principles. Oh, wait a minute. There's actually a lot of them. There's the one distinction I would say is that the Next Economy MBA definitely is sympathetic to those, and the principles that we use for the training, especially sessions 7 through 16, are how to apply those principles to your circumstance in growing a Next Economy organization. So sometimes the regenerative economy principles are like macroeconomic concepts, which again we highlight in the training. Like regenerative economy might say honors community and place. Like place-based economies are really important, and local self-reliance. We definitely talk about that, especially in the first 6 sessions. But then how does one apply that to a Next Economy entity organization design from perspective of supply chain distribution and including customers and their ownership, or kind of the building a community of owners? Applying that is actually different than just appreciating the need for a place-based approach. And so we focus sessions 7 through 16 on applying those types of principles to the design and operation of an organization. That would be the only distinction that I would offer. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for, is, because comparing with the MBA degree that I received, there were a lot of education different areas, but not like putting together, integrated into working towards a business model. because I mean, understand it, because like a lot of people, their peers in my program were not going to be entrepreneur and did not have their businesses. So they were just getting general education on businesses, and sustainable business practices, of course. And but then meanwhile, I do have a vision. I already have a practice put together, but it's not very integrated, and also has not very focused. So I wanted to have like a framework behind it, and with some support to honing in the core model. So it sounds a little bit like incubator program. Is that right? This program, this MBA.
Could be. Some incubators oftentimes will provide a more intensive level of support. You sometimes usually in the past would be like physical space, and a place to take an idea. But in the structure of the curriculum, the sessions 7 through 16 are based on our consulting practice of working with hundreds of next economy organizations from early stages into later stages of development. And we kind of structure it kind of like what we call critical success factors, or another way of saying it is like when somebody tries to grow or start a next economy institution, where do things break down most commonly? Like what are the things that really go wrong? And so session 7, 8, 9 kind of goes in that order of like, these are the things that we see most commonly going wrong, and how do you address those so that they don't go wrong, all the way down to session 16. So I'd hate to compare it to an incubator because it's not, it's a session every other week with an office hour, whereas many incubators have a more intensive kind of approach, but it's similar-ish, I would say.
Should we keep going on some of our preceded questions?
Sure.
Let's see. There was a question on the structure, time commitment, and interaction with other cohort members, in-person activities, and industry-specific focus. So kind of a lot in there, and we've touched on some of it. So yeah, maybe I'll just summarize to answer this in once. But the 18 live sessions. Then followed by 1 hour office hours. And so in addition to that, we have monthly racial caucus groups. We have people of color and white allies that are facilitated separately. Those are the only sessions that are not recorded and shared out. So you have to attend to be part of those. But yeah, we highly encourage that, and we get great feedback from people attending. Yeah, the only other structure to the program is there are special sessions and affinity groups that happen periodically throughout the training. But again, everything it's a self-directed learning journey, so you're invited to engage as much as you want. On average, we hear from students who are kind of engaged with the full course, it's about 2.5 hours a week over that 9 months to kind of participate in everything. Let's see.
A question from Alice in the chat around time commitment, which hopefully you just covered, Sean. Hopefully they answered your question, Alice. If not, feel free to drop more in there. But also asked about costs for the program. And I know there is some discourse in the chat about that as well. So could we pivot to talking about that really quick?
Yeah, can you answer it?
Yeah, I definitely can. So the cost of our course is $4,500. We do offer a number of payment plans. There's an option to take the first 6 parts of the course. And then we do have folks who just kind of take that introduction, kind of get a sense of the program and decide to commit to the rest of it. We also have the option to split it into monthly payments to make that a little bit more accessible. In addition, we also have a commitment to a 50% discount on that $4,500 tuition for folks who self-identify as people of color. But we also, just work really hard to have a practice to not turn away folks for a lack of funds. So I'll be sending a follow-up email. I mentioned this in the chat, but for folks who are here clearly interested, we want to make sure that this can be as accessible as possible. So even though our early bird pricing ended, there's a discount we're offering to folks who attended the intro session. So that'll be coming in email. But if folks have any questions or just like concerns about accessibility and tuition, definitely encourage you to reach out to us. We'll include our contact information towards the end of the session and are happy to chat with folks about anything additional that would make this feel more accessible and supportive to you. Did I cover everything?
I don't know if we covered, I might missed it, that once you are a part of the MBA, you can always come back and re-listen, and people have done that. Sometimes it's like, wow, I'm having my business and I really realized that that part that we were talking about HR was, I need to follow that. And so you could do it either for one particular session that or that office hour, or you could do it for the whole year again. And so it's like this commitment we're making that we really want you to use and get this material.
Yeah, and we do have we love it when alumni come back, and we have, I don't know, a handful that re-enroll every session, that just, hey, now I'm in a period in my business where I want to kind of catch up on this and go through it all again. So we love that.
Yeah, and I know the caucuses are open to all alumni. Are all the affinity groups also? Or it depends. All the affinity. So it's a chance to be a part of this community, basically.
Yeah, the affinity groups are specifically to connect across cohorts. So we have a worker cooperative affinity group for people who are working cooperatives across cohorts. We have regenerative agriculture, regenerative finance, building resilient communities. I think those are maybe the 4 or so active affinity groups. But again, yeah, people across all cohorts that are in those industries or fields connect regularly on those topics. All right. Let's see. What else do we have for questions here? For students with disabilities, what accommodations and support exists? Definitely, if there's specific ones, please let us know. We do our best to accommodate. We have obviously the video recordings. I think there's closed captioning we can enable, so if people want to see the text. We don't specifically offer translation, but we have had groups that do translation. We have silent breakout rooms for folks that don't want to do a breakout discussion. We do offer a one-on-one support as needed. If folks are having, a challenge or want support around a certain issue, they can always just reach out to any facilitator. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But again, if there's a specific request, please let us know and we'll do our best to address it. Jeanette, what else is there?
In terms of support or just like other questions, I'm seeing a couple.
I guess other questions.
Yeah, is this all an online program or are there in-person elements? I can briefly speak to that and y'all can fill in. So the course itself and anything that you need to be successful is offered online. And as we mentioned, also pretty well designed for an asynchronous format. However, something I've been super excited about, as I mentioned, and things that we're seeing folks organize more. And we're bringing a community manager specifically for this program onto the team, is facilitating more of those in-person meetups. So I think there's a group of folks from New York who are in the process of planning. I'm working on getting something together in Portland. And so I also think the team does a really good job of like letting folks know where some of the case story organizations are featured, or, you know, next economy organizations that we've worked with, so that you really have the opportunity to see in practice how these things are happening in your bioregion. I know for me, again, being new to Portland and also new to Lyft, getting connected with some of the organizations that we talk about or focus on was really helpful for me. Yeah, that embodied and lived experience is really important, and I know we've got a desire for more of that in the future. Let's see. There's a question around what skill sets can individuals expect to be equipped with after the program, and I know that we've already mentioned in here kind of the focus around literacy, but wondering if there was more we wanted to add there. If not, I can pull another question.
Yeah, that distinction between literacy and competency is like valuable. I'll kind of highlight like one example. In like alternative financing, you know, when we talk about how to access resources, raise capital, there's, you know, a 90-minute session and a 1-hour office hour. And in that session, we go through different approaches to understanding how to raise capital, what options are available, how to find investors, how to define terms, how to qualify potential investors, how to think about it differently than business as usual kind of investing, what are the traps. So there's like an understanding, and sometimes there's a reaction like, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. And there's case stories to animate the possibilities. So that's like a literacy, like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. Now I know. When it comes to like defining the terms for your organization and for your investors, there's probably multiple hours, maybe many hours of potential development of skills to be able to like know exactly how to set terms that are appropriate for a particular stage and entity. And that's why there's an affinity group on regenerative finance. That's why there's the resources. So there's over 300 course resources, videos, podcasts, readings, books that are all optional, and they're roughly annotated, whether they're supplemental or reference. We have a self-study training on raising capital, which is 9 hours of self-directed learning. And so the amount of time in the training to develop a strong set of competencies to be able to intuitively kind of know what the best types of terms are for a particular entity to access the various forms of resources or capital, and the consequences thereof, that's like beyond the scope of the 9-month learning journey, though we leave breadcrumbs or possibilities to learn more. So it's not like that we don't want people to have all those competencies. It's just that within the container of the learning experience, there's only so many skills that could be developed. That said, even on the communication training, like session 9, there's some skill building, some resources and templates for you to use to try things on. So there's some skill building that can happen. And skills get acquired different ways, through modeling and through understanding, learning, trying things. So that's also one of the purposes of the extra fun optional assignments, is to provide some opportunities for skill building by practicing. Like, oh, let me draft that, do that positioning exercise and draft a core value proposition. That's the intent there, is to help build up skills. But you could literally run a 9-month training on core value proposition, you know. Like, so on many of the topics in the arc of the training have enough possibility for skill and competence to have their own training, which is something we're working on. But I hope that helps with that distinction.
Thanks, Kevin. Got another one for us, Jeanette?
Yeah, there was one around someone had asked who had taken the course. I wanted to drop this in the chat. We've got a page on our website that's got a couple of case stories from other alumni. So if you're curious, obviously Nadia shared, but a couple other folks here with just kind of their intention and desire behind the program and what they're up to now. Definitely encourage you to check that out. We also make a practice. We've got a podcast for folks who don't know, and we've got a couple of amazing alumni that we've highlighted there. So again, if there's a specific industry or topic that you're interested in, chances are we've probably trained someone in or around that industry, and so definitely would encourage you to check that out as well and support their work. I'll drop a link to the podcast as well, if folks are interested in that. Okay. Okay, we have a question here that's a little particular to an individual, but I'll just read it out. Kind of similar to the one before, but what's the benefit of taking the course other than learning? I'm a single mom of 2 and work full-time in lending for underserved entrepreneurs of color. I'm also an entrepreneur. Can't afford to take a class unless I really quantify the results of it in some way other than knowledge. Although I live to learn, I need to keep our resources close to home. But it's also exactly the kind of thing that I was looking for. So yeah, want to make sure if that person wasn't here that we were able to address your question.
Yeah, I can
Kevin,
jump in. Sure, yeah. So what are the benefits of taking a course other than learning? Other than learning, there's the network of connection. So if you're doing underwriting or full-time in lending to underserved entrepreneurs of color, knowing sometimes there's participants in the training, and certainly in the alumni network that are also lenders, or participating in lending organizations to similar populations, underserved entrepreneurs of color. And so there can be some connection, so not being isolated or alone. I'm not saying that you're alone, but that more of a network. There's potentially, this maybe falls into the category of learning, but there might be new ideas, ways to support prospective borrowers or borrowers, or maybe even some nuance to the underwriting criteria, depending on what how it's currently structured. And that's, of course, I'm drawing connections to the role that is described in the question of full-time lending for underserved entrepreneurs of color. But I heard the question is also an entrepreneur. So there could be, again, connections to co-founders, connections to customers, connections to other people who have started at similar organizations in terms of your entrepreneurial endeavors, or connect supply chain or distribution. So there is a network effect that would be benefits beyond learning. And yeah, I would highlight that most of the benefits around the training are oriented around learning. Those are the main things that we do focus on, is learning opportunities. Templates. So I guess in addition to knowledge, there are templates, dozens of templates that could be applied to an entrepreneurial endeavor. And by just even having that template, sometimes that could save you a lot of time. And I also hear in the question that there's wanting to quantify the results in some way, which I'm kind of, in terms of quantification, I'm gathering like, cost benefit analysis for yourself. Well, it was said before, I think Jeanette mentioned, but we value accessibility. We've never wanted to have or intended to have financial capacity be a barrier to participation. We believe what we're sharing, and hopefully, is critical knowledge and networking connection to support our mission of transforming the nature of the economy to work for the benefit of all life. And so if there's some accommodations or something that needs to make the tuition more workable in a way that makes the cost benefit analysis in your mind more doable, workable, please let us know. Reach out to us. I don't know, Sean or Jeanette, if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say to this, the person with this question, I'm not going to tell you it's automatically valuable for your situation. So maybe, if they want to reach out to have a one-on-one consultation about exactly what they're up to and how this might help. But, we're not overly confident in telling everybody that this is the training they need to take. So really trust folks to discern for themselves, and then happy to help with that, trying to weigh that with an authentic concern towards what's in your best interest. And what else can we say about that? Yeah, I mean, we can offer payment plans or more accessible pricing as needed, but yeah, I would be more curious about exactly where they are, and if this training is indeed gonna create that value. So I think it's a great question.
I think it's like everything else. It's like the more you put in, the more you get out. If you know that you're not going to have time, I mean, on the one hand, if you know that you would have time maybe to do it next year, or you know that you will have time to participate as you can, maybe then it's worth it to invest and do some now and then continue to make time to participate in the future. But yeah, I mean, it's so important to know with everything, like, do I have the time to invest in it, because what's great is that you have people who are ready to support you and deepen that learning. If someone wants to create a special group on a particular interest, we're like right there to help them create that, a special affinity group, or you can ask questions about resources, but it does take time, and that's unfortunately part of the pressures of this capitalist system, which we're trying to change.
Thanks, Phoenix. I see Anna. Anna, you have a question?
Yeah, if I'm part of a small group of folks who are interested in exploring co-op together, do you all offer group discounts? Do you recommend that we join together? Is there like protocols on sharing a login? Just want to get a sense about group attendance.
We've let's see, we've learned from people in the training that if more than one person on a team takes the training, it can be really valuable. So we've seen groups do that. We certainly support it. We don't necessarily have a formal discount beyond what we've already shared is being offered, but again, if that was a constraint, we would consider helping you. But yeah, definitely seen that be really helpful for teams to take it. And then let's see, we've had people take the training who want to, sometimes they'll have a team member join for a specific session. All the training materials are under what's called Creative Commons license. So you're free to share them as you wish. The only request is don't sell them without talking to us. So yeah, if you do have a team, you're welcome to share all the recordings, all the content with them. You're welcome to have people sit next to you enjoying the training if you want. If you want them to be a full registered participant, we would ask that they register. But again, we can help you work that out if pricing is a barrier. Does that answer your question, Anna? Or do you have more?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All right, I see we're getting close to time. There's another question from Ben. Ben's asking, would you say it's a good program for people with corporate/nonprofit jobs? What do you think?
I'll just start. My guess is, without the analytics right in front of me from the pre-course surveys, so forth, that the majority of people who are in the program have kind of enter with some, probably by majority, it probably means 50% plus either have a nonprofit or a corporate job. By corporate, it might be small business, medium business, but they're looking to either transition because they have an idea. As Sean stated before, there's kind of like three general archetypes: those who have an idea and want to develop a next economy initiative, those who are already in a Next Economy initiative. So they typically either have a nonprofit job that might be the Next Economy initiative, or they might have like a co-op job, or they're already in something that we would call like non-corporate, non-business as usual, at least. And then there's like a third category, those who are looking to transition their career or their vocation, and they often are in a corporate or a nonprofit kind of job. So between that mix, I'd say over 50%, without having the analysis in front of me, are in a kind of a nonprofit job or a corporate job with that at the time they enroll in the training. And so we get really good feedback from those participants. So would I say it's a good program? I like to believe that. It depends on the intention. Then I think if somebody works is a senior vice president at Walmart and they enroll in this program and they want to have an influence at Walmart for taking this program, might not be the best program. I don't know that it won't give them ideas for things that they could try with their team or in their division, or but if I'm really honest, I've said this to other people before who have asked that question, who have been in a larger corporation. I told them this. I said, this happened to me recently. Somebody asked me that question before signing up, and they were in a large corporation at like a executive level. And I said, well, if you take this training, you might find that you want to leave your job and transition your career. And a few months into the training, they called me back and said, that happened. I want to leave my job. I didn't realize what was possible. So that could be a side effect.
We're not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Oh, well, thanks everybody. Really appreciate your attention and curiosity. And if we have no more questions, we'll.
But I just want us to say a little bit about that corporate, is that there are, maybe Walmart is like one scale of really big, but there's also lots of places that are in between where you might take something that you learn in the course and offer it to your company, and because you suddenly realize, hey, you know, that issue that we complicated just now, I have a great idea and I know resources we can use to tackle it. So I wanted to just put that plug in.
Absolutely. Lots of room for improvement and advancement. Well, thank you everybody for joining us and for watching this. We appreciate your interest and your good work you're doing in your lives, and we would love to have you join us, and just look forward to being in relationship with you. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you around.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.